Why do we fight? To protect home and family. To preserve balance and bring harmony. For our kind, the true question is, what is worth fighting for? The Fight is All podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Fight is All podcast. Today we sit down with Mr. Waryoga, Mr Billinge, a man of many skills which were only a part of the topics we discussed today. We talked about different martial arts, including types of striking, grappling and its many forms, and the ancient roots which these sports share. We go over the fact that a lot of the new hot trends in martial arts today are really long forgotten sports which have been a part of culture for hundreds if not thousands of years. We also discuss different types of workouts and equipment that he recommends for any aspiring martial artists like ourselves and really anyone looking to get in shape and become more functional and strong. We hope you enjoy this episode as much as we enjoyed making it. Let's go.
Nice to finally meet you in person.
Nice to finally meet you too.
So for everyone, first of all, listening and watching, this is my first actual conversation with Tom. So if I ask you any questions that you have already answered like 50 times, you have to forgive
Oh, no,
me.
that's fine. Yeah, absolutely. I like to answer questions.
Super. So first of all, welcome to the Fight is All podcast. We are
Thank you for having me.
very glad to have you.
Very glad to be on.
Second of all, for everyone who is not familiar with you, what is waryoga? If you can explain in simple terms.
Yeah, of course. So waryoga aims to look at all the different elements from the Indo-European martial tradition. So, first of all, Indo-European people were the ancestors of the European people, of the Iranian peoples, and the Northern Indian people. They were a group that came from somewhere it's a bit disputed where exactly, but somewhere in either the Caucasus or into Asia slightly, but somewhere in Central Asia area roughly. And all of the various European groups, like, the Celtic, Germanic, Slavic, Hellenic, Latin people, they all come from the Indo-European people, just like the Iranians do, just like the Northern Indians do. So waryoga wants to look at the martial tradition because the Indo-European people were warriors. They were cattle raiders who went through stealing each other's cattle, stealing other people's cattle, waging war and moving into new territory. So they were mobile, nomadic people, and they relied on martial skill and knowledge of the arts of war, but also that came with some spiritual and psychological exercises as well as physical exercises in order to make the best warriors who are able to participate in war and fighting and be able to use that to a higher purpose. And so waryoga wants to look at all the different pieces and then kind of figure out the route where they come from. So I've done the Indian things with the Kushti wrestlers in India and the exercises they do there with different tools like the mace and the clubs and things like that. I've looked at the Iranians and I've been and wrestled in Kushti wrestling in Iran. I've wrestled with Chukhe wrestling in Iran. And participated in the sport in the Zurkhane, which is their exercises for warriors, which they still do to this day. And now my research focus is moving more across again into Europe. So my next focus, as people who've been following me may see, is a lot of the ancient Greek martial arts, the pankration, and also the wrestling and the boxing from ancient Greece. And the plan is to go all the way through to look at all of the different peoples, groups of Europe and what their martial tradition is. I've been doing a lot with bare knuckle as well. I've been involved in bare knuckle boxing for a very, very long time, over a decade of teaching the original traditional English style, which is different from the modern style. And so, so waryoga is basically trying to take all these different things from what seem to many people like different groups of people, but actually they all come from the same roots. So that's waryoga's aim, is to find the roots and to create a physical, spiritual practice that people can use to improve their fighting, or just to improve their life, really, if they want to.
Yeah, because when I have been looking, and if people look around your Instagram, for example, if anyone tries to answer the question like, what do you do specifically? There is so many different things. Like you can see striking, wrestling, I think you said with the mace or club. I'm not
mace,
sure.
And club swinging things. Yeah.
Yeah, this thing, lifting stones. Like there is so many different things you do.
Yeah, but they are all related, because they all come from a warrior tradition ultimately. Like, so I don't have a problem with what we call conventional gym workouts, like with a barbell and stuff like that. No problem. That's good. But it's not where my interest is. And so why I'm interested in the exercises, especially the mace swinging and the club swinging, is that they were designed specifically for warriors, and particularly wrestlers. So in India, those tools they use are for wrestlers. They were made so that wrestlers could have a functional strength that kept their body healthy and moving nicely, and being able to move in a way that a wrestler moves. So those exercises are warrior exercises, where I would argue that, like, for example, powerlifting, yes, it'll make you strong, but it doesn't come from the warrior tradition. It comes maybe just from the strength tradition, which is fine, but it's not my area of research.
Yeah, so it gets you strong, like traditional gym workouts, they get you strong, but not in maybe the sort of areas or movements a warrior has to be strong.
Correct. That's what I would say. Yeah. I mean, there is a crossover. That's not to say that there's completely no crossover, and that, you know, if you do barbell, it won't help you at all, because it will, but it's not specific. Whereas these exercises are especially for those, like, for combat sport athletes, really.
Yeah, because at the beginning, because I have seen such workouts, especially with the maces before, and in the beginning I was like, what the hell is this supposed to, like, it doesn't look like anything. I was wondering where it came from, but later in my years, when I started working a lot in MMA, because our club, as you probably know, bully team in Bulgaria, we focus mainly on MMA and combat sambo.
That's awesome.
So when I started training more in martial arts, I started seeing a lot of these sort of workouts, like everything that is something like this. All kinds of combat athletes do this, especially wrestlers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So understanding them.
Completely. I mean, if you actually look and you see, for example, the Soviet wrestlers in the sort of 1960s and 70s and 80s, a lot of their movements were like, you know, with these weights around the head, you know, even if they're using just like a plate or like a stone, even. I've seen like old Russian boxers just in the forest with stones, just these videos from like the 50s and 60s. They were doing also this rotational movement, you know, which is like very beneficial for people who fight.
Yeah, so for what I can see, you're looking at a lot of different stuff, different activities, different types of sports, but they're all sort of connected into what I would call the martial arts in one way or another.
Yeah, correct. They are. Even stone lifting, because if you look at stone lifting, what better for wrestling than picking up from the ground an object that is not very, it hasn't got a handle. It's just like a round thing. Pick it up from the ground. You have to bring it to your chest, you know, and sometimes higher, but I think the chest is high enough usually. That's perfect for wrestling. It's hip drive. It's gut wrenching. It's being able to pick somebody up and throw them, you know. Yeah,
and a lot of these exercises, especially what you mentioned about the stone lifting, it reminds me a lot of the strongman type of workouts, which they lift heavy things, but they don't lift them like a deadlift with a straight back. They lift them up like this, because you cannot really straight your back.
Yeah, correct. People don't really have handles in the same way as a barbell has handles.
Yep, they don't.
Yeah.
But I'm noticing that recently it's appearing in a lot of places online where I see people practicing. I'm sure you're well aware of the, I think it was called Zercher deadlift or
Oh yeah, the
squat,
searches. Yeah.
where you lift with the barbell
Fantastic.
in your hands,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
similar exercises which I cannot think of the name of, which you lift weights, but your back is always like
Then
never straight. Yep,
yeah,
it's
it's been
bent.
straight. Right.
Mhm.
Because there's been, I think it was in the 1960s or 70s, they started to change to say you have to have what they call a neutral spine, which means a flat
Mhm.
spine. But that's not the traditional way that people worked out or lifted things. I mean, if you do combat sports, when are you ever completely straight back lifting? It's not.
Yep.
It's not the way that human beings will naturally lift. So my argument was always, instead of working out only with a flat back for safety, is to try to use the curve back and make it stronger.
Yeah, exactly. That's what was appearing recently in my feed. I started seeing a lot of these workouts. People, I think the one that I was doing recently, that I started doing recently, was called, I think, the Jefferson curl, or I'm not sure
I've heard of it. Yeah, I sort of
what
know
it
what it
was, where you try to lift something off the ground, but you start in completely bent position,
is. Yeah,
and in the end you actually stand up straight.
straight,
And
right.
what I remember is in the beginning, because before I started doing martial arts, before I started doing MMA, I was traditionally only doing gym workouts. Gym, bodybuilding, like this was my only thing.
Yeah,
And I remember being in the gym a lot of years back, and I was seeing people do very non-traditional
yeah,
exercises, and I'm looking at it through my bodybuilding lens, and I'm looking at and I'm asking myself, you're just trying to injure yourself, like you're
yeah,
doing nothing. And first of all, just when I started doing martial arts, I was like, some people are not in the gym to just look better. Some people
right.
are actually doing
Correct.
exercises with a functional aim. They're trying to get
Yes.
better for something, not just
Yes.
to look better.
Yeah.
So this is one of
Definitely.
the exercises that very, I think I found it out through wrestling, because
Yeah.
wrestlers always lift people when they're
Bent over.
curved.
Yeah.
Yep.
Correct. Correct. You have to. You can't. You can't lift them like you'd lift a like for bodybuilding.
No,
It's not
no.
possible. Not possible.
Yeah, and the other thing that I found out, because when I started doing these sort of exercises, when you start lifting with a curved back, of course, I start with like first absolutely no weight, then maybe like 2 kilos, 3 kilos, and
Yeah.
little by little. Right now, I'm lifting like a kettlebell that is 8 or 12 kilos with this style of
Curve
lifting.
back. Yeah.
And of course, when people see me, they say, you're just trying to injure yourself, like you're not doing
Yeah. Yeah.
anything
Yeah. Of
else.
course.
And when I look at myself, I'm like, yeah, if you try to do this like with my weight, of course, 10 kilos is nothing like compared to a lot of people. But I tell them, if you try to lift some sort of weight immediately, like without warming up, without trying to get strong this motion, of course, you're going to injure yourself.
Yeah. Of
But
course.
if you do it progressionally, like you lift no weight, you lift 2 kilos, little by
Correct.
little you add weight, your spine and your muscles are gonna get stronger through this movement.
Correct. Correct. I mean, it's like with the mace, with when they
Mm-hmm.
swing the mace. People ask me, how heavy should I swing? I can deadlift, 300 kilos or something, whatever, 200, 150 kilos, something like that. I say,
Mm-hmm.
you start with 7 kilos. And they look at me like I'm crazy. What? That's nothing. But it's like I say to them, look, you're swinging this weight. When it swings, it's actually heavier than the weight itself. And
Mm-hmm.
also because of the velocity and the spinning, but also you have to get your joints and shoulders and everything stronger and ready, because it's ligaments, it's tendons, it's not even the muscle, it's the it's the connective tissue. So you have to start light and then you build. If you try to get a mace and swing like 30 kilos straight away or 20 kilos straight away, you'd tear your arms off. You
Mm-hmm.
definitely injure yourself. Like 100% you're going to injure yourself. That's why you have to build slowly, start light, and then you can build up. And then you get to a place where that weight's not necessarily easy, but feels comfortable. You know, you can, okay, yeah, I can do this, you know.
Yeah, because when I was looking at this exercise, now I have not done specifically this exercise, like with a club, with a mace, because we don't usually have such equipment in most gyms. But my old MMA coach always gave us like some type of this movement, like it was either with dumbbells or with a plate, but you still did this sort of
100%
movement.
works perfectly. I've seen people doing stuff also with kettlebells, like you know, kettlebell swing rotations. They're all good. Rotational strength is very important for people in combat sports, because you have to be able to have very good shoulders, very good spine. You have to be able to move and not get injured when you're fighting. And the thing is, it's so easy to, obviously it's so easy, especially grappling more than striking. You know, it's so easy to get injured. Something goes the wrong way, your shoulder gets pulled back. You know, the whole idea of grappling is to make your body go the wrong way. You know, so you want to get them and make their body go the wrong way. So if you can be stronger in those places, then you're going to be harder to submit, but also it's going to be easier for you to escape submissions, but it's also going to be less problematic for injury. You're not going to pick up the same injuries if you have the rotational movement in your shoulders, healthy elbows, healthy spine, healthy hips, knees.
Yeah, so if I'm hearing correctly, because I think I'm trying to explain the same thing to people that are training, because a lot of people, again, coming into MMA, they maybe trained normal gym workouts, bodybuilding, street fitness, and things like that. And a lot of people who are going into MMA, starting MMA, they seem strong, like they look strong, they feel strong doing certain movements. But for example, when we try to do a submission, like a regular Americana, which bends the arm backwards for anyone who's listening, and this type of people, I have noticed always, like when you only start moving in this direction, they immediately tap.
Correct.
It looks like they're not at all strong in this position, that of course the arm is not made to move in this position.
Of course. But you can train to make it stronger, to be able to, you know, either find your way out or to, you know, some of it is knowledge of finding your way out, of understanding grappling.
Of course.
Some of it's also strength and health of the shoulder joint. If you have no flexibility in your shoulder and somebody moves just a little bit, it's going to hurt. You're going to tap.
Yeah. And this was the main thing I realized relatively recently, because I have had some type of injuries, of course, as every person who practices combat sports.
We all are injured all the time. I mean, I'm injured often too. That's good.
Yeah, of course. And this is like maybe the first thing that I thought when I saw the mace swinging. Of course, the first thing I thought was, what the hell is this? But the second, when I found out about these type of exercises, the first thought that came into my head, relating to what you said, that you want to start very, very light, I was thinking about when I get any type of weight behind my head and I try any type of movements, even without doing it, only by imagining it, I feel stress in my tendons and my joints, because this is not, most people are not used to their body moving and being strong in these movements.
Correct. I mean, because a lot of traditional gym workouts work out just the muscles. They do work the tendons to some degree, but
a little bit, yes.
And ligaments are really worked a lot with swinging, because it's also high repetition. And high repetition is actually what your joints require to make them stronger and to make them healthier, because tendons are very slow to strengthen. They take a long time. And so you need a lot of work in that, and a lot of repetitions. And so that's where the real benefit of doing the swinging is, because it's high repetition, it's very good range of motion, and it's going to make the tendons and ligaments strong, not just the muscles. So it's more holistic. It covers more of all of the body, you know, rather than just isolate the biceps, isolate the triceps, isolate the chest. You know?
So what would be some other types of workouts that you would recommend, particularly because our team, our combat sports team, like mainly what they care about is MMA, and in my opinion, people that are looking for combat sports would really benefit from all different types of workouts. And swinging, for example, seems like a very good thing to have.
Excellent. And then I would say the other thing is the body weight stuff, especially the Indian body weight things, because and the Iranian body weight too, is they do a lot of so there's two things they do in India, which is one's called the dand and one's called the betak. The dand is like a push-up, but then the body sprawls up, so it looks like a sprawl. So it's like this, and that's perfect for wrestling because it increases explosive movement patterns, but also flexibility of the spine. It's very grappling specific, so it's really good for MMA. And then the betak is a deep squat where you go on your toes and your knees come out in front of your feet. So they used to say, again, 1960s, 70s, your knees should never pass your toes when you exercise, which is crazy because if you do grappling, you know, there's no way you're going to fight and your knees are never going to go over your toe. That's just like, it doesn't make any sense. And so the betak gets you, so you squat, but you squat down to your toes with your knees out, and then you come back up again, and you do it in a rhythm over and over and over and over. So it's really good because it's good for your knee strength and knee health. And of course, if you fight, your knees often can get damaged, especially if you're working. The gym I go to, the gym I train at and teach at, is a 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu school. So there's a lot of leg lockers. Everybody loves heel hooks and stuff like that. And so, you know, knees, you have to make sure they're healthy. Otherwise, you know, they're gonna go very easily. So betaks and dans, which are the two. Sometimes they call them in English Hindu squat and a Hindu push-up.
Push-ups,
so those are really great, those two bodyweight workouts. And then the Iranians have got something similar. They've got push-ups, which they call sheno, and it's the same kind of idea. It's like these kind of bent back and moving the spine with the push-ups. So it's like very good. And all of these are done with quite high repetition. So it builds up your endurance and strength, and it keeps your joints and your body healthy, and it gives you kind of conditioning because you sweat. I mean, if you do it, you do a lot. So you sweat and sweat and sweat. So it's great. And it works your lungs, your endurance, you know, your joint, your arms your muscles are burning, but you keep going. It's good.
Yeah, our coach, Sebastian, which I'm sure you have already talked to, he has shown me. But he was giving us sometimes especially during conditioning workouts, the Hindu style push-ups.
Yeah.
Which is again a lot of reps, a lot of sweat.
Yeah.
But I like them. I like them because they feel good, and they're very different than normal push-ups. Like you do a type of push-up, then you do a type of sprawl, then you get your hips back. It's so many movements in one.
Yes, movement. It is in one exercise, right? And it's again, you can see when you do it. Yeah, it's grappling. You know, it's strong, it's powerful, but it's healthy for your body. You know, and it does everything you want from a single exercise for a martial artist, particularly MMA and grappling.
Yeah, and the other one with the squats I like because first of all I started doing them without thinking. Like maybe a couple of months ago, during warm-ups, during my own conditioning workouts, I just started doing them. I was like, this feels good. This is different than normal squats. I like it. Nothing hurts when I do it, so why not? And of course, a lot of times during the workouts that I coach, because besides the martial arts competitions. I'm also personal fitness coach. So a lot of
Awesome.
times that I coach other people, a lot of times I tell them exactly the thing about the knees over the toes. And every time I tell them, I feel like I start to repeat myself because I coach a lot of people. And every time I say, so for this specific workout we're gonna try to not push our knees too far forward. But just so you know, this is not wrong. It's just a little bit more stressful for the joint. If you want to do it, of course, it's good to do it, but you have to go little by little.
Yeah, you can't use like heavy weights for that kind of stuff, because then that's gonna, if you put your knees over your toes with a heavy weight on top, then you can have some trouble for sure.
Yeah. And all the time I tell them, like, this is completely fine. It's actually very useful. But if you do this, and then I show them a full CC squat, I'm sure you know where you go completely knees to the ground.
Yeah.
And I show them this exercise, and I say, of course, this is very good a very good skill to learn, but you have to go little by little, because if I tell you to do this, most people have terrible flexibility, muscle strength,
Right.
all of this.
Yeah. You can't just begin immediately with difficult things,
But it looks like a lot of these things that maybe I have seen them somewhere, maybe I just intuitively try to do, because when I started doing martial arts, I found myself doing a lot of weird exercises that I was like, it seems like a good idea to be mobile.
That's the best way to do it, though. I mean, like, okay, you can see other people doing things, but there's something, there's a knowledge which comes from inside, and it's like just intuition is a very good thing. You'll know if an exercise you're doing is terrible for you, and you'll know if an exercise you're doing is good for you if you listen to your intuition. If you're in tune with yourself and with the movement pattern, you'll know.
Yeah. So a lot of people in our sort of circles, martial arts, a lot of people, like, when a new guy comes in, they ask, hey, what have you been training? For example, of course, some people total beginners, but other people have been training 2 years jiu-jitsu, 2 years boxing, like they have all sorts of history. So for anyone who is not familiar with your story, can you tell what sport did you start? What type of sports have you practiced through the years?
Sure, yeah, of course. So I started as a kid. I played rugby, just general kind of things, and I threw shot put as well when I was a teenager. So I used to throw shots. I used to play rugby, but I didn't do any combat sports. And then in my early 20s, I discovered Muay Thai, and so I have been in Muay Thai for over 20 years now. I'm 44, so I'm still doing that after more than 20 years. I lived in Thailand for a while. I trained in Thailand. I had a few fights, but nothing very particular. I wasn't, as a fighter, I don't know if I didn't have like the real killer instinct at the end to be like a really high, but I was very good at teaching it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to still do a little bit here and there, but I'll really concentrate on my teaching of that. So I've been teaching Muay Thai for over 15 years, more than 20 years in it, and a few fights. My last fight was in 2009. So it's quite a long time ago for that. And so I stayed in Muay Thai. I was very also interested in boxing, but particularly bare knuckle boxing. So I've done a little bit of boxing too. When I was in England, I've trained in a few of the old-fashioned boxing gyms around London. I even got a bit of training at Repton Boys Club, which is one of the very old boxing gyms in London. I managed to sneak in one time. They let me in. It's a closed club, though. They didn't like me being there, so that was kind of funny. So yeah, I've trained in a few boxing gyms as well. But I was really interested in bare knuckle boxing more than I always enjoyed watching boxing. Like, I watched boxing since I can remember as a kid. My dad used to have it on the TV. I used to watch it and always loved it. So, but I was always interested in where it came from, because you'd hear stories in England about the old boxers like 200 years ago, and how it was like bare knuckle and no gloves, and it was as a kid you think, wow, that's really cool, that's really kind of and I love history too, so after being in Muay Thai for several years, I decided I wanted to research what was bare knuckle boxing really, what was it? And then when I started to research it, I realized it's nothing like modern boxing, or it's very different from modern boxing, with lots of different styles, different moves. It's kind of, in some ways, it was very primitive, but then it developed into something else, and it was very interesting with the rules. So I spent a number of years researching and putting together what I think is a very good reconstruction of old English boxing. And then I moved to America. So I grew up in England, and then I moved to America about 7 years ago, maybe more, 7.5 years ago. Actually, probably coming on 8 years. And so I came here, and where I moved to has a 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu gym. And at that time, I was interested in Jiu-Jitsu, but I was more looking for somewhere for striking. I went there and for the striking, and I ended up staying for the jiu-jitsu. And after a year or so, I actually became the main Muay Thai coach, because the other Muay Thai coach, he left and did some other things. And so I became the Muay Thai coach at the gym there. So I'm something I still do now. I'm the head Muay Thai instructor at Radius Martial Arts, which is in Fairfield in Connecticut. And so I started doing jiu-jitsu then, probably about end of 2017, something like that, because I felt like I'd done everything I could do myself with striking. There wasn't very anywhere for me to go really. You can always get better at something, but when you've done something for a long time, how much better you can get is only a little bit, So I wanted something different that was still combat sports, still martial arts that I wanted to do, and so I started jiu-jitsu. And what I like about the 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu is that it's no gi. I do sometimes do gi. I do once a week gi jiu-jitsu, but mostly I do no gi. And so I'm now a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. Been purple belt for about 2.5 years or so, something like that. I've also from there, because I was very interested in the jiu-jitsu, got me interested in wrestling and grappling. And I'd done a little tiny bit of MMA my mother was from Cyprus, so I'm half Greek. And so I went to Cyprus and I trained in a gym in the capital in Nicosia just a few times in grappling. And the coach there, Yakovos, he said to me, "You should be a grappler. You're better at grappling. You seem that you would be better at grappling than striking." So I was like, okay. So that's when I came to America. I thought, okay, I'll try the grappling. And so since then, it's been kind of a love-hate relationship for grappling. I love it, but I don't like the way that my body feels sometimes. But that got me interested in all the wrestling around the world, different traditional wrestling styles. And so I got interested in the conditioning and stuff. And so that's why I've been wrestled in India and wrestled in Iran. I've gone back to England a few times this year. I went back and I did 2 traditional styles of wrestling in England. One is Cornish wrestling, which is a jacket wrestling. It's very, very old. They can trace it back almost 3,000 years, they say. And then Cumbrian Westmoreland wrestling, which is like backhold wrestling, like Scottish style almost. So I did those, and that's really cool. So I'm really now interested in seeing how the traditional wrestling culture, it's part of waryoga is the wrestling side of things, of course, but the wrestling culture and how that can actually kind of plug into my jiu-jitsu too, and into modern grappling, because there's a lot of interesting skills that are in traditional wrestling that you can absolutely use in MMA and jiu-jitsu 100%. So that's where I'm at. That's my journey. And right now I am, right now my main focus for the next couple of years is to try and figure out ancient Greek pankration to some degree. They call it pankration sometimes in the West, but it's actually pronounced originally pankration, which means to master all. Like pan is all, and kration actually, sometimes they say it's powers, like all powers, but it actually means all mastery, meaning that you can master striking and grappling and all of the skills of combat sport fighting. So it's basically a very old MMA, which is first recorded about 700 BC, just before 700 BC. So it means it's even older than that. So it probably started about 3,000 years ago, but then it died out in the 300s. Basically, it was Theodosius, one of the Roman emperors, Holy Roman Emperor, the Roman Emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire. He didn't like it because it was related to the ancient games, which were pagan, and the emperor was Christian. So he said, no more games.
Religion.
Yeah. And so then it died out, after that, But there's a lot of vases and statues which show some of the techniques, and that's not a perfect way to reconstruct something, is to look at one picture. But if you look at all the pictures and then you take what we know about grappling now, maybe we can bring some of what was in the pictures to life. And that's where
I believe actually pankration was like maybe from the first ever Olympic Games, the old ancient ones. They started.
It was in the original Olympics, yeah. So first they had the wrestling, and then a few years later they had the boxing, and then a few years later they had the pankration. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. We think that we invent new things all the time, but really I think there's nothing really new.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting, especially in the last couple of years, in the last couple of decades, where I remember when I saw the UFC first had the logo 25 years UFC, and then they had 30 years, and everybody was talking about, this MMA, this sport is very young compared to all other sports. And a lot of people that are a little bit more educated say, yeah, the sport is young, like it started, the official sport is young, but people have been doing this probably like as old as running.
Yeah, it's as old as time. I mean, if you say, so I think that it all started with, again, warrior class. So, you have different class of people in society, and the warrior class were originally the ruling class. That's why the kings and things were always warriors, because they're the ones that protect everybody. But it doesn't come exactly from war. It comes from when two warriors in the group have an argument and they need to settle the problem. How do they settle the problem? First, they do it with swords and things like this. And then what happens? Too many of the warriors are killed by their own people, and you don't want to lose your warriors. They're very important. They're very necessary member of society. So they put the weapons away and say, okay, we'll fight just with no weapon, and whoever wins is right. That's it. And I think that's where it comes from. So if that's where it comes from, it goes back forever. It goes back to the beginning of time.
Yeah, and the thing that you said, that perhaps is not the best idea to sort of build an impression of statues, vases, and stuff like this. But I'm thinking like maybe this is the only way. Like where else can we find?
Right, correct. There's almost nothing written, very little. And what is written, it's not like they did a book with. See, maybe they did. Maybe there were books with illustrations, but it's unlikely. And even if they are, they're gone. I mean, they've discovered a small part of a wrestling manual from ancient Greece, from what's called the Oxyrhynchus papyrus, and it was found about 150 years ago in the desert in Egypt, written in Greek. But it's like this small fragment of paper, and you can see that it was part of originally a manual about how to do wrestling, how to teach your wrestlers, things like this. but it's such a small thing. It doesn't tell you very much. You learn very little. But if you get all of the little fragments that are written and you get all of the pictures, there's a chance you can make something happen, especially if you know the human body can only move in certain ways. There's a limited number of submissions. Ultimately, maybe there's a lot of them, but there's a limit. There's this many, that's all. You can't have too many more or less, and so it's kind of funny. For example, they were saying at one point, I heard, no one had ever done a triangle submission until the 1920s or 30s. And I found a picture from ancient Greece of somebody doing a mounted triangle. It's like, come on, like,
Yeah.
Triangle, like, it's natural, and again, my coach called Travis, he was saying when he was a kid, he got in a fight with another kid and they fell down and he ended up accidentally putting him in a triangle with no knowledge, just as children, like, and he got it, boom. So why can you can't say nobody ever triangled anybody until 1920 something. It's not possible.
Yeah, and this was one of the things that my coach Sebastian tells us, because a lot of times, in this day and age, a lot of things come up, Instagram, TikTok, especially if you follow people related to martial arts. A lot of times you see new submission found. I found this crazy submission.
Yeah.
I created this, nobody else has done this. And for example, one of our guys sees such a video, they show it to my coach, and he says, I have seen this like when I was 10 years old. Like, a lot of times you see something new that is actually perhaps 30 years, perhaps 3,000 years, but it has been done before.
Correct. In sometimes, so I have a few things that I do which I've discovered for myself in the gym, but I know that I'm not the one who invented it. I know that this is just it. Maybe the other people in my gym never saw this, and maybe I've never seen it. But of course, why would no one have done this? This is obvious. This is simple. Like, it's not even just simple. It's just body mechanics. When I discover something, it's usually because it happens by accident, and I know I don't discover that thing. Somebody else has done that before me. Many people have done it before me. It's just that it's not on the internet. It's not,
perhaps you discovered it for yourself. Yeah, but it doesn't mean you created it. Yeah.
Yes, right. That's what you can say. I think it's fair to say I discovered something for myself, but I didn't create it, because there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that.
Yeah, and a lot of times during our technique practice, our coach has moments when he says, I discovered this by accident like 20 years ago. And then he says, of course, I'm not the first person who has done this, but I didn't know about it. And then I found out in the moment.
Correct. Yes. That is the right attitude. That's the correct. That's the truth.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, when you mentioned the different types of wrestling, the Cornish one, the jacket ones, but first I wanted to ask you, before you told about the wrestling, you said something about bare knuckle boxing, which to me is very interesting, because in the last couple of years, of course, you have seen the modern bare knuckle, which is not. For me, it's not bare knuckle. You still have wraps from here to here. And for me, that changes the sport immensely. Like, I have never seen bare knuckle, like actual no wraps people throwing strikes like this. Like, you cannot do this.
You'll break your hands.
Of course.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's the thing. That's why if you look at traditional English bare knuckle, they always prefer. I mean, I put a video actually the other day about the punch called the chopper, but get this punch minute. Most punches were straight punches. You have to think about how you align your body, where you're hitting. You have to think, where am I hitting? I'm not going to hit here. I'm going to hit just random swing like crazy. I have to think, I'm hitting here, here, side of the face, hitting the body. You have to think very carefully about what you're doing. You can't just, it doesn't look anything like modern boxing, because in modern boxing, you have gloves, you have hand wraps, you're safe. You know, you can punch however you like and you're not going to hurt yourself. But in bare knuckle, proper bare knuckle, you're going to hurt yourself. Now, the other interesting thing about old bare knuckle is that because of the rules were totally different. So the rule was there's no number of rounds and no time limit. So a round is until one person goes down. Then you have 30 seconds rest, and you have 30 seconds to make it back to the middle. So 30 seconds total between the guy falling down and the next round. You come back to the middle. There's two lines. They're called scratch lines. So you have 30 seconds to come to scratch. And then again, someone goes down, end of the round, next round in 30 seconds. But also old bare knuckle allowed grappling. So I could throw you. I could trip you. I could sweep you. There's actually a champion. Some of the champions of England in the boxing champions were actually wrestlers. There was a guy, I think he was the second to last champion of England. He was called Sam Hurst, the Staley Bridge infant. He won because he picked the guy up, turned him upside down and smashed him down into the ground. He won, knocked the guy out, you know? So the rules were completely different. So you can grab, you can punch. I mean, they used to, as well, in the very early one, they could kick the shin. Only the shin. Kick the shin. It's called purring. Like, that's a traditional way in boxing, because not that it's going to hurt them, but it stops them coming to you. You kick the leg, bop, and then you can hit them again, you know? So a lot of the style, people like now, they'll look at my Instagram and see if I do something with bare knuckle. This is bullshit. This isn't going to work. Oh, yeah, great. Won't work. Never can work. And it's like, well, it's because you don't understand where it comes from or the rule set. Because in the rules of the old way of fighting, it works completely fine. And here's the thing. Did people break their hand? Sure, they did. There was a famous fighter. He was champion of England for a while. He was called Tom Spring. His real name was Tom Winter, but he got called Tom Spring. He was known to have very weak hands. They used to call him the light tapper, meaning he could only tap, he couldn't punch hard because he didn't have knockout power. And so his fights would last a really long time, like 3.5 hours, 4-hour fights, you know, these huge long fights. And almost every fight he'd break his hands, but he'd still win. He'd still keep fighting. You know, it's like these crazy stories, you know, like, but it was a different game. So when people think bare knuckle now, they just think bare knuckle boxing is boxing without the gloves. And the modern one, yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
But that's not the original bare knuckle boxing. The original bare knuckle boxing is completely different.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking when I see this, because I look at the sport, I see, of course, wraps from here to here, and I see people swinging all around, and I understand why this thing is popular now, because, of course, it makes for a lot of action, but at the same time, I understand that this is popular and not complete actual bare knuckle, no wraps, no gloves, nothing. Because I remember a couple of years ago, I found some video of probably British bare knuckle boxing, but it was like underground, low quality video, like from 20 years ago, and two guys boxing. And I was very interested because I have never seen anyone fight like this, of course, except in real life. But second, I understand why this is not the way they do this now, because for the entire match, was probably 10-minute video, something like this. And the first 9 minutes and 50 seconds, they spent feinting, moving, feinting, moving, and like the second punch that was thrown was knockout. All the time they were just measuring, because if you start trying to throw without aiming, you're gonna break your hand.
Yeah, correct. I mean, that's the thing. It's a lot of these a lot of the ways of doing it. The reason that they're not popular now is exactly that reason. Maybe the round's 15 minutes and then there's one hit, you know, and then you know that's the end of the round. And like people said, thinking, why was I watching two people not hitting each other? But it's the same with catch wrestling. So catch wrestling is the old submission style from Lancashire in England. And so the reason that modern professional wrestling like WWE and stuff like that exist is because people used to watch the wrestling, catch wrestling, and got bored because it's two guys on the ground rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling around trying to get things. And some of those matches could last a really long time and nothing happening because one guy just goes flat on the ground and the other guy spends like 20, 30 minutes just trying to turn him over to his back, get the pin. Mm-hmm. And so that's why professional wrestling started, was they would start to make a script to make it more interesting for people. Okay, so you're going to do this and he's going to do this and this is going to happen, And it's the same thing, that boxing, that old boxing, if you're not somebody who understands fighting or combat sports, maybe you don't find it very interesting to see it like that. But if you understand, you see what's happening. If you know what fighting is, if you've fought or you've watched a lot of fighting, that's why when people now, most people, if they watch the UFC, let's say, not even most, but a lot of people when they watch the UFC, they hate it when it goes to the ground. Yeah. They want to see I just want to see two people hitting each other and that's what I want. And it's because that's easy to understand. But sometimes the groundwork, it's not so easy to understand. If you're somebody who has no fight education, so to speak, like doesn't really know. And that's why you can talk to the average person in the street and they don't know what's going on and they don't find that bit very interesting. They just want to stand up, hit each other.
Yeah, because like striking, I'm not saying it's easy to understand striking. A lot of times when we're looking at UFC, we see a fight where a lot of the times we're looking at the fight and I'm seeing such control, movement, feints, level changes and stuff like this. And I'm like, ooh, what's going to happen? This is interesting. And at the end of the fight, somebody sitting next to me says, that was a horrible fight. And I was like, what are you talking about? There was so many things happening. But of course, I'm not saying that it's easy to understand striking, but everybody understands when you swing around, you hit somebody falls down. It's easy to understand who won, who lost.
Yes.
But grappling, it's very, very different.
Harder, especially you got two guys, one fighting for the submission, the other defending it. It can be like 10, like in just a grappling match, you say you've got like 10, 15-minute grappling. This guy's doing it, just defending like this. The other guy's trying to get the submission in. It's like for a normal person to watch that, there's nothing happening. This is really boring. And it's like, no, there's a lot happening. You just don't understand it.
Yeah, of course, it's much, much harder to understand.
Yeah, correct.
But I think it's like the reason that jiu-jitsu and grappling these days, like maybe not all of them, but like 90% of the audience, the people who watches the sport for entertainment, are actually people who practice the sport.
Oh yeah,
because if you don't, you don't understand anything.
Right. Yeah, correct. Yeah, I mean, if you go to a grappling competition, say like I actually was competing in August. That was my last competition. I had a super fight. They call it a super fight, but I don't think of grappling as fighting. I think of it as kind of competition. But I had a match, and everybody who was there in the audience was somebody who grapples, or family members of people who grapple. But that's basically it. But you go to an MMA fight, and the audience, I'd say most of them don't fight at all. They just
yeah. But of course, I think that's a lot of the other reasons why that might be is because, of course, grappling in general is harder to understand. But I think another type of a reason why that might be is because when you have grappling, you have jiu-jitsu, you have wrestling, you have sambo. Even if you're only looking at jiu-jitsu, they have like 10, 12 different types of rule sets.
Yeah, right.
So we had one of our guys from our gym had amateur kickboxing fight like during the last month. And this fight was in a nightclub. And when we were watching the fight in the nightclub, we were sitting in the audience, and of course, people all around, drunk people, the audience. And during the fight, he had amateur kickboxing fight, but the fight night was all different types of sports they had. kickboxing, grappling, boxing, everything.
Yeah.
And the first two fights, one of them was a grappling, two of them were grappling matches. And during one of the matches, one of the guys pulls guard, like he sits down and he starts going towards the other person. And one guy next to me says like, what is this? What is happening? And I turn around to him and I say, hey, because this is technique in this sport, he can actually do this. This is normal. And he says, yeah, but who is winning right now? And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, right.
And I started to tell him, like, depending on the rule set, because I'm telling him I don't know the rule set, but some grappling rule sets might say that the guy on top is winning. For example, if you're talking about MMA. But in grappling, if the guy sits down and he's trying to go towards the other person, a lot of grappling rule sets actually say that he's the one who's winning because he's initiating. So I remember this time that he asked me, like, who's winning? And I just was about to say, and I was like, I don't know who's winning. Depends on the rule set.
Yeah, it depends on the rule set, right? Rule set is everything, you know. It's like what I have to say that so many times when people comment on some of my posts, because they're like, oh, this won't work. And it's like, or this, what is this? I don't get it. And it's like, well, it depends on the rule set. You know, like someone said, is this legal about this punch I showed? And I said, well, depends on the rule set. You know, like legal where? Legal in boxing? No. Legal in this? Maybe. You know, like who knows? Depends on the rule set. And that's the thing. I mean, all combat sports have rule sets, and so that's like a constraint. That's what holds it. So I can do this, I can't do this. This is allowed, this is not allowed. And so that's what makes it interesting, really. Because if you took away all the rule sets, you'd end up with all the same thing, which probably wouldn't be very nice. It would be probably quite nasty. You'd see a lot of unpleasant things, a lot of like stomping people on the ground and, you know, things that actually people wouldn't enjoy at all and wouldn't be very, very good for people. Which is basically just street fighting. If you took away all the rule sets, it would just be like a fight in the street with two people want to kill each other.
Yeah, and I think that's like, for example, the reason that they have banned pancreation like in the past is maybe different, but I think that today the fact that it's a new sport and the fact that the MMA is trying to be officially recognized sport is like 90% just trying to make it more, definitely not family friendly, but make it so it seems like an actual sport. Like it's not somebody trying to take out your teeth. It's not somebody like stomping your face on the ground.
Yeah, right.
Of course, they have a lot of rules. It started like trying to have as little rules as possible.
Right, UFC one.
Some sort of rules. Rules are necessary.
If you're doing it as a combat sport, it has to have rules. If you're doing it for defend yourself in a street fight or it's street fighting, okay, no rules. But like, you don't want to be in that fight. I don't want to be in the fight with no rules. I definitely don't want to be in the fight with no rules. I like the rules. But yeah, you need rules. That's what makes it into a sport. That's what makes it entertaining. That's what makes it interesting.
Yeah, and the second thing I was about to ask you, because you mentioned like a bunch of different types of grappling sports, like in different countries. Some countries have jacket, some countries have just a belt. Like they seem to be so many different types of the same thing, but they seem so different.
A little bit different, yeah. There are. I mean, it's actually really cool because each one requires slightly different skills and way of moving. So I kind of like traditional jacket wrestling because it means that you have to really concentrate on your legs because your legs are the part which are doing the sweeps and the trips and the pull them down. So you have to almost think of it like feet fighting, you know, because some jacket styles are fixed grip. You can't change it. Some jacket styles, you can change your grip and you can grab, but it always needs so maybe you're strong and you can just lift them up and throw them down, but you need to be able to use the legs. And then some styles are like with the belt again, like in Afghanistan, they have a style that is just belt, You know,
Only
you can
a
have
belt, yeah.
hold up the belt, and then it's like trying to wrestle them on the belt. Same in Pakistan has the same. And then lots of Central Asian styles have just the belt, and like sumo wrestling is just the belt, you know. And also Koreans have one called Sirium, which is also a belt. So there's the belt style, there's the jacket style, and there's no style. And then actually in Iran, traditional Koshti wrestling, which is the one that they did a long time ago, and it still exists now, is only pants wrestling. So you wear a t-shirt on the top, and then you wear this pair of wrestling pants that comes to just below the knee. So you can grab the knee, you can grab the belt, you can grab the pants, like the Turkish oil wrestling. I did that actually. I did the oil wrestling. And then that's the same thing. You grab the pants, you can grab the leg, and in that one, you can put your hand inside too. But like, you know, it's like, they're all different and they're all kind of interesting, you know.
Yeah, and that reminded me exactly of our last episode, which my coach Sebastian was leading, where he was talking with Andrei Mushanov, the coach of the coaches in MMA, and they were discussing exactly this, like the differences between Sambo, Judo, MMA, wrestling, and all of the modern styles. And he was saying exactly something like this, that in MMA and wrestling, you have to be a lot closer, talking about the grappling, you have to be close enough to grab both parts of the body. When you're talking about Sambo, of course, you can grab, but you can grab the gi, you have a place to grab. But because their jackets are a lot more fit to their bodies, you can grab them and immediately have control on them. So you have different techniques, but it's a little bit closer to this. And then they were talking about judo, which of course, again, you can grab and have different types of control. But the judo jacket, which they talked about, I didn't know this because I haven't practiced judo, but they were saying it's a lot more loose.
It's looser.
So a lot of the techniques, like they're the same techniques, but you have to have a lot more control. You have to have a different type of gripping to make the same techniques.
Yeah, I've heard that from judo. I haven't practiced judo either, but I've heard from judo guys. They always talk about how the grip is absolutely like the most important part for them. It's like getting that very good grip, like a very good control grip, because you can't just grab any loose grip. It's not going to work for you. You have to get superior grip. You know, you have to out grip your opponent. Is what I've heard people say.
Yeah, and they was just saying this exact thing, that when you have people from judo and sambo, they're a lot more skilled with the foot sweeps, of balancing opponents, which a lot of the people in wrestling, not necessarily that they don't have it, but they're not as proficient in this.
Right, because those styles operate with that almost exclusively, or they really put a lot of emphasis on top control and using the legs, you know, and that's the jacket. I mean, that's really a lot of jacket styles. Like in Iran, I did Chukhe, which is actually a Kurdish style of wrestling. It comes from the shepherds, they say, and the jacket is no sleeves. So you can put your hand, it's almost like in China, they have shuai jiao, which is those jackets that have, they're cut here. So you can put your hand inside. And as soon as they get their hand in and it comes through to your collar and they've got complete control here, you can't break the grip. And suddenly it's like completely different from any wrestling you've ever done, because they can get such strong grips. If I've got in jiu-jitsu a jacket and someone grabs a lapel of mine, I can strip the grip.
You can break it, yeah.
Okay. I mean, maybe it's not as easy as just strip it off. It takes some work. But if they have a hand inside completely and they have all of the fabric in their hand, you can't strip the grip. And then they grab your belt too, because it's like belt and jacket. And then you're in big trouble. So it was really interesting because I felt completely dominated. I mean, the guy who I was wrestling with was like he was also a judo black belt. So a lot of those guys also do judo. So he was way, way, way better than me. But when he was working with me, and he was being nice to me too, he was like helping me a bit, you know. But I felt like, wow, what do I do here? Like, this guy has so much control from this what he's learned, that I felt like kind of stupid.
Yeah, it's very interesting that like so many different countries, almost every country has some sort of wrestling that is
Yeah.
specific to them. But again, they're all around the world and they're all different, but they're all the same, but they're so different.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, I think wrestling is a universal language. I think you can go almost anywhere in the world, and if you know how to wrestle in your style, let's say, or some style, you can wrestle with the people in that country who can wrestle. And you might not be able to speak each other's language, but as soon as you put your hands on each other, then you start to have a conversation. And it's interesting because it really opens up people to you. You know, people, they like you. Like, if you wrestle with somebody, they love you for it. They love you for it, you know, like, because, and if you wrestle, if you fight, you understand that, you know, that when I get in the ring against that person, we share this moment together. And even if other people have fought before, ever, nobody else will understand the moment you had with that person. Like, you have this moment with them, this connection. It's very personal. And afterwards, even if you were striking, even if you were hitting each other, afterwards, you kind of love that person. You like that person. You want to hug them. You know, I mean, yeah, okay, different sports have like different attitudes in the modern world. Like, yeah, hate that guy, I'm going to kill that guy, whatever. But the truth is, usually you don't have a problem with the person you're fighting. You don't know them. You just, you know, you've no idea who they are. Here you go. You're fighting this guy. Okay, that's who I'm fighting. But after you finish the fight, or at least for me, after I finished any fight, my instant feeling is I want to go and hug that person and say thank you. That was awesome. You know, even if you win, lose, doesn't matter. You still want, I still want to do that. You know, I feel like I like that person, that that he and I shared something really powerful, you know, that moment of like fighting or even in practice, whatever. It's like, it's great. I think, honestly, the world would be a lot of a better place if more people just actually fought each other in that kind of way, you know, like actually, you know, if more people practiced some kind of martial art, like, especially like combat sports, I think more than even traditional martial arts. I think if you're doing grappling, MMA, striking, whatever, I think the world would be a better place if more people did it, because they'd have more respect for each other.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I always try to tell people who have not done any sort of combat sport. But a lot of people have some sort of stereotype, like if you're an MMA fighter, if you're a wrestler, if you're a kickboxer, everybody who hasn't practiced these sports think he's a fighter, he's gangster, he's like this tough guy. And I, all the time, when I see such people, I try to tell them, like, I have not met a single person in MMA competition, grappling competition, that we haven't become friends afterwards.
Yeah, correct.
Like, even in MMA, where we fight, you try to actually break somebody's face. After that, you know in Muay Thai. And after the fight, doesn't matter if one guy is bleeding, other guy just passed out. You go to the person, hey, nice fight, nice to meet you. If you want to train, if you want to train sometime together, I would love that. Like,
100%.
you always become friends.
100%. You invite. It's so funny. Nearly always you invite them. Come to our gym. You're welcome anytime. You know, it's true. It's because people who fight or have trained to fight have a different outlook on life. It doesn't make them a violent person in the world outside. They have control of violence. They understand violence, but they can keep it into a certain place. This is my place of I have my violence, right? That doesn't mean I go out in the street and now want to fight everybody. Why would I do that? That would make me a crazy person. I don't have anything to prove in the street. I do all my fighting and training in the gym. That's where I do it. And I want to make it so I'm better for myself. It doesn't make you a violent person. You know, I used to have a friend when I first started Muay Thai a long time ago, one of my coaches. It was an assistant coach, and very funny guy, but he used to say, I'm a nice guy. I just do nasty things. And it was like one of those, it stuck with me because he was a nice guy and he did do very nasty things when he's fighting, but that's separate from life. You know, it's like, it's not that it's separate from life, but you know, it's not, outside. It's just there in that place. That's the time for fighting. Everything else is not the time for fighting.
Yeah, and this was maybe another thing I have noticed, like where you said, like, I'm not a violent person, I just understand violence, and I actually think it's the other way around. Like, people who have never practiced martial arts are way more aggressive because they perhaps don't have an outlet like to put their energy in.
Correct.
And second, they don't understand the consequences.
They don't understand.
But for me, I have like by accident found out that when I stop, most often through an injury, I stop training in martial arts. Little by little, I find myself having more violent thoughts. Like somebody says something to me that's a little bit
angry. Yeah.
And I'm like, I start to get angry, and then I think about like, hey, why am I getting angry? Like, this doesn't make any sense. But when I am regularly practicing, like 90% of the other time, somebody says something to me that may be considered a little bit rude, a little bit annoying, and I'm like, okay, thanks, and I go the other way. And because I feel like in my experience, I feel that when I have put my entire energy in trying to become like a martial machine, like you try to strike people, you try to grapple people, but you have put all your energy into that, when somebody, for example, on the street tries to be aggressive with you, you're like you said, I have nothing to prove, like you don't feel the need to be aggressive back.
Right, because there's, well, as well, because you also, one, you know that person isn't really a threat to you at all. And two, you know the consequences of fighting. You know, like, this can happen. This can happen. That other person, maybe they have no idea. Like, yeah, come on, let's, like, no. Or they say something, they think, it's like the famous Mike Tyson. I think Mike Tyson said something about, like, everybody, I don't know if it's Mike Tyson, I think somebody said on the line something like that, but it's like, that people feel like they can say anything they want because they've never had been punched in the face. They haven't had the threat of, like, you know, being punched in the face or something. You know, if the threat of violence is understood, if you understand what can happen in a violent situation, people are more polite to each other.
Yeah.
You know? It's like, so obviously here in America, there's a lot of guns everywhere. You know, a lot of people have a weapon. So I'm not going to start an argument with anybody because I understand that somebody could just shoot me, and it makes me a more civil human being. I'm not going to go out into the public and say, oh yeah, you're an idiot, you're this, you're that, because it's like, I'm just going to be polite. Hello, how are you doing? Nice to meet you. Thank you. Bye. You know.
Yeah, and that was
powerful.
Yeah, and that was the other thing I keep telling everybody ever since I started practicing martial arts. Like, you have a stereotype and some sort of preconception about people in martial arts because when you see somebody from this sport, it's very loud, very negative, and you remember that. Of course, you're gonna think about a certain sport if you have only seen one negative thing. But when I think about it, 99% of people that I meet through martial arts, there's the most humble, nice, friendly people that you have ever met. And if you meet them on the street, besides if you notice their ear, you can no way say, he's an MMA champion. You can never say that.
No, exactly. But that's the way it should be, because they, you know, it's this idea of, like, I think it was one of the American presidents, I can't remember who, but he said, walk quietly, but carry a big stick, which means, you know, okay, I have the weapon, I have the knowledge here of how to fight somebody, but I'm not going to go around like walking around like as though I'm the guy, you know, because exactly that. Martial arts, combat sports teaches you to be humble. It teaches you that it doesn't matter how much you think how good you are, somebody's better than you. You know, it teaches you to have respect for other people. It teaches you very good values, like in fact, probably some of the best values you can learn through martial arts and fighting, and that carries on into your normal life.
Yeah, so there's so many different types of workouts that I see if I have, because I'm looking at your Instagram, and
Okay, cool.
I see so many different things, but what sort of workouts, combat sports, or sports in general do you practice like right now on a daily basis?
Okay, so on a daily basis, I do a lot of things. Everything's on Instagram. I do actually. It's difficult because I haven't got time for it all really. For combat sports, I practice jiu-jitsu, and I teach Muay Thai, which means I sometimes practice Muay Thai. I haven't done it so much. When you teach something, and I'm a bit older, I don't fight as much, but I still enjoy it. I'll still spar with the guys. They need it sometimes. They need somebody with more experience to go in there. And then in terms of working out, I do a lot of stuff actually. So I do all the Indian body weight stuff, squats, and the betaks and dams, the squats and the push-ups. I do the Iranian push-ups. I do Iranian meal, which are 2 big Iranian clubs. I do the Gada. I swing something every day. I swing like the mace, I swing clubs, whatever, every day. And then also stone lifting, I'm doing more and more and more because I love it. I love it so much. And I'm now trying to build up my strength for the stone lifting because I'm smaller. So I weigh about, I think in kilos, maybe like 72 or 73 kilos, something like that. And so a lot of the guys who do stone lifting are heavier, they're 90, 100 kilo guys. And so compared to the size of the stones, I'm small. So I'm trying to get stronger so I can lift some of the heavier stones that the big guys lift. So I'm doing now, I've got a program I'm kind of working with a little bit where I'm using a lot of, trying to use kettlebells a bit to kind of get my strength for that. Because kettlebells will make you strong. For sure, swinging them, it will make you very strong. And Bulgarian bag, I've been using the Suples Bulgarian bag from Ivanov, which I think is a fantastic tool. Really, really good for fighters. And then, that's kind of it. I've also just recently got a pull-up bar. My friend gave me a bar, and so I want to work on my pull-ups because that's a really good test of strength. How many pull-ups you can do, because it's just you against your body. So I'm going to be this winter. I have a program for the winter. It's going to be pull-ups, kettlebell on top of my normal swings. I'll swing every day. It's going to be pull-ups, kettlebells, and sandbags, because sandbags are a good option instead of stones, like the big strongman sandbags. Because the stones are outside, and in the winter it gets too cold. Yeah. So I'm going to take the sandbag inside instead and do the sandbag inside. That's my plan.
And I think it's a little bit more different now, what I imagine, because when you say sandbag, I don't think I have seen exactly what you're talking about. But from what I can imagine, like sandbag compared to stone lifting, it would be a little bit more comparable to the human body, because I imagine it moves a little bit.
Yeah, it has some give, so it has a bit of bend. So maybe the sandbag will be 100 kilos, 150 kilos, like, so it's heavy, but with a stone, the stone's hard, so it doesn't move. But the sandbag, it moves a little bit with your body. So it actually can be a bit more difficult than a stone sometimes, because the sand shifts, it moves around. So you have to have a very good grip. And actually, I think the sandbag's probably it's going to make me stronger for stone lifting, but also stronger for grappling. Definitely. It means when you get a hold of that, you're not going to let go.
Yeah. And this is what I was imagining, like with the sandbag, because I don't think I have ever lifted something like this. But I remember during one of our conditioning workouts, our coach made us lift and turn. I think it was a boxing bag, like a big boxing bag. Yeah. And I have no idea how much it weighed, but I can't imagine it was anything over 50 kilos. But it was feeling so much heavier because it was moving as you were lifting it.
Yeah. Boxing bag is a great version, great thing to do with that. You can definitely do that. I've seen it done before. I think we actually might have an old boxing bag at the gym. Maybe I'll try and do that as well. That'd be good. Yeah.
So from everything that you're doing, especially a lot of these, I try to think of them of added exercises like you may be doing Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, but all of the other work is something you do on top that you try to get strong for martial art and for life.
Yeah.
But what types of these, perhaps you would recommend all of them, but what would you recommend to, for example, a lot of people listening to this right now, maybe from our gym? A lot of them do our normal MMA workout, but a lot of them, especially competitors, they always have like some type of additional work that they do, something in the morning and our workouts in the evening that we do technically, and sparring. So which of these specific workouts and equipment would you recommend to our competitors or anyone who is in martial arts who's trying to have something more?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good. So I would recommend. I always say this. Actually, when people ask me, I recommend the body weight, the Hindu squats, Hindu push-ups, which are called Betak and Dand. Those are fantastic because they are, like we said before, they work all your ligaments, they're conditioning and strength at the same time. It's endurance. It gives you something really very sport specific. And also the mace. If you're going to get one tool to begin with, because other things will come afterwards, but the mace, it's easy to make because you can just make it with concrete and a handle for a tool, like for a shovel or a spade, something like that, and concrete. Anybody can make it almost anywhere in the world, and it will cost very little money to make. I have on my links in my bio for my Instagram, I have a link to go to. It says join the waryoga Akara free tool manual. So if you click on that link, it gives you a link to the free tools manual. All you do is just sign the email. It puts you on my email list. And then the next page is a PDF with links to videos on how to make 3 of the tools that I use, which is how to make the gada, which is the mace, how to make the garnal, which is a concrete ring you wear around your neck, and how to make a nal, which is a stone for lifting. It's like a Indian style lifting stone. But the gada on there, which is the mace, that's such a great tool. I mean, honestly, if grapplers use the mace, they will really understand, because it has so many benefits. It has the benefit of your whole body movement, of strength of your body. It has the core strength, but also, most importantly, apart from even the shoulder health and the shoulder rotation, is grip. And not just grip strength, but what we call grip intelligence, meaning wherever the mace is here, if it's at the back here, with both hands here, your grip has to be very tight. When it comes to the front, your grip is loose. You know, it doesn't need to be so strong. So what happens is, over time, your body understands about how to hold tight and how to relax the grip, which actually for martial artists is really important for combat, because if you just hold on tight all the time, it's not going to work. Sometimes you have to be loose but holding. Sometimes you have to know and feel instinctively when to change your grip and feel your grip change. So I would say that the mace, which in India is called a gada, the gada is great, and you can make it. You can make it really easily, like super easily.
Yeah, we have I think a big type of hammer in our gym, which is a hammer with a long handle. I believe you could use this as well.
100%. You can absolutely use it. It's called a sledgehammer. So it's like this with a big long handle. Yeah, absolutely. A sledgehammer is an excellent substitute for a mace, like excellent substitute. And then when you're ready to go heavier, you can make one. But the sledgehammer is a great place to start, for sure.
Super. Because usually when we have it in the gym, I cannot think of anything else we have done with the hammer, except like hitting a tire with it.
Yeah, no, you can swing it. Definitely
Yeah,
swing it.
so when you were talking about the mace, the club, I was thinking, there's actually, I think you can use this
Yeah.
as well.
That was a very good thought. Yes, you definitely can. I know people who do. So I know people who will do one and then it gets too light, so they put two hammers next to each other and do two at the same time. Yeah. So yeah, you definitely
Okay.
can.
Okay, so I'm thinking about maybe starting with just one hammer and
Start with
then
just one. Start with one. Start with one. Start with one. Yeah.
super. So you would definitely recommend these types of equipment
Yeah.
for our sport as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Take that sledgehammer and swing it, and that is probably one of the best things you can do, as I would say, to add to your training style.
Super. And a lot of the other bodyweight stuff, I was thinking about that they're very interesting because some of them I have done once or twice, some of them I have seen in some sort of YouTube videos that was just like when I was seeing them, I was thinking, this seems like interesting workout. It seems different, it seems nice, but I never thought about it that it actually makes you more functional and stronger in specific activities.
Yeah, right. And that's what it does. It makes you specifically stronger for the sports that we enjoy.
Super, and I will definitely pass this on to the team and anyone who is listening.
Please do.
I hope they include it. But what would be, for example, if you can make one message to everybody who's listening? Of course, most of the people probably listening right now are practicing some sort of martial arts, but even if the person is not training anything or perhaps is training another sport, if you can make a message to everybody, for example, if you can say something to perhaps give them something to think about or something to improve their life, like what would something like that be?
Yeah, sure. So I think people always think that the successes in life are where they will. That's what people focus on, is the success. Oh, they did this. I won this. I got this. I achieved this. But actually, I think people need to embrace the other side as well, like when they lose or when they're under pressure and they feel like everything's bad. And I think that actually is the moment where you learn the most. That embracing the hard time or the difficult time is when you get the most, you learn the most, and you can develop more. So if you take it as a jiu-jitsu, for example, as an analogy, if you're always the one submitting everybody and winning, you're not really learning you are learning something, but you're not learning as much as when you've understood, okay, I'm under pressure. I feel terrible. This other person's dominating me. And being able to have that ability to stop, breathe, think, and then keep going. That is the moment at which you learn more. So I would say that, especially these days, there's a lot of hard times around for people, that in a time of adversity or difficulty, that's the time when you really can develop and grow, and that we should embrace that opportunity rather than thinking, everything's terrible, everything's bad. And it's like, yeah, maybe it is, but you can't do anything about it. But what you can do is learn from it.
Yeah, I think that's incredible message because, like you said, these days I think a lot of people may be going through hard times, but I think the popular message is that you try to avoid hard times, you try to be safe. Like everybody, I feel these days is trying to avoid suffering or hard times, where like the opportunity to grow is exactly the opposite direction.
Yeah, exactly. It's embracing it. What's the idea that pressure is what turns coal into a diamond? So you want to become a diamond. You want to embrace allow the pressure, let it happen, and embrace it, and understand that you're going to come out of the other side of that pressure and that tough time, like stronger, more resilient, and better person.
Exactly. I think that was incredibly powerful message because a lot of people want to be diamond. They want to be the strong person on the other side. But maybe they have forgotten or they don't know that you don't get there without the suffering.
Right. I think there was a Thai fighter. He said his nickname was a diamond. The name escapes me for now for a second, but he said, everybody wants to be a diamond, but nobody wants to get cut. So it's like, and that's true, you know, that you have to be willing to go through some stuff to become the diamond, you know.
Of course. I feel like we have so much more to talk about. Like, I'm sure you have so much more information, but I think this was incredible first conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, I loved it. Had a great time. Had a great conversation.
I had a great time as well. And I'm looking forward to perhaps doing one more, because I know you have so much more to share. So
absolutely. 100%. I'm happy. I'd love to talk again.
Super. So I would love to hear it as well. And in the description of this podcast, we're gonna put every one of your links, for example, so when people watch it or listen to it, they can check out the other stuff you have.
Thank you very much.
And I think you have a book as well, right?
Yeah, I have a couple of books. Yeah, I have 2 waryoga books. So
super. So we're gonna put the links for those in the description as well. And I'm very glad again that you accepted our invitation.
Oh, of course. Thank you. The pleasure was mine. The pleasure was mine.
Awesome. I love to hear that. And I'm gonna wish you a lovely day, because I think it's midday.
Yeah, it is. It's like not even 2:00 yet. So yeah.
Super.
Thank you. I'm gonna wish you a good evening, because I'm sure it's evening.
Thank you. So have a lovely day, and again I thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. It's great to speak to you.
And I hope to see you again.
Yeah, definitely.
Bye.